Good evening, everybody. My name is Karen from Quantum Healing with Tina and Karen. Today I'm with my lovely co-host, Tina.
Hello, everyone.
We're just hopping on for a call. It's been a while since I think we had a couple of guests in the last several, that's not true. Last couple of YouTube sessions. But we wanted to come on today to talk about, is the soul trap theory fear-based?
Okay, so this is a really hot button topic for me when, let me just take a deep breath. When information, especially in this, well, mostly in the spiritual community, is labeled as fear-based, it literally drives me insane because information in itself is not fear-based. Like someone commented today, and we're going to talk about this on a post, that they could, when they hear the fear, they instantly discount everything. I'm like, wait a minute. You can't hear fear. You're feeling fear within because that information is triggering that fear that's already within you. If you don't have that fear within you, you're not going to feel that, right? Because it's
Correcto.
just information. It's not, you can't label information as fear, like it's just
Right.
information. And when that information triggers something inside of you that sparks fear, that's when you know you need to look at that and heal whatever that is, right? When I was first coming around and learning that I could possibly have attachments, because I was struggling for so long to heal my body, to heal from anxiety, to heal from depression and PTSD and like chronic pain and illness and infinite number of physical symptoms, like really, really struggling to heal. I started to feel like maybe there was something else going on, that there was this was like my introduction into learning about attachments and entities. And everywhere I looked in the spiritual community, it was like, well, if you believe that, it's true,
And who the hell wants that?
Right. And who wants
You're
to
like,
believe that?
me. I want a
Right.
demon.
Right. Who wants to believe that you have dark entities attached to you causing physical, mental, and spiritual issues? No one
Like
wants to believe
you've
that.
chosen the suffering, like you've manifested the suffering through your creations,
Right.
and you're making it come more into fruition because you believe it, or you're bringing it into your vibration and energy space.
Right. Right.
That's weird, right?
It
I
is
mean, it's
weird.
logically thinking. Like if you just step back and think about it for a second, it's like Q and Ono Rider.
Right. It's like, who would want to manifest that? Like, is it true that we create our realities? Yes, to some degree. That's absolutely true. But there's also an objective reality, collective consciousness that we live within that is already created.
Correct.
So whether you believe in entities or not, they don't care.
Yeah, they're gonna
And
eat
it's
you
better
anyway.
for them. Right. And
Yeah,
it's better for them if you don't believe in them, right? Because then they just get to keep
feeding into your programming.
and working in the darkness.
Mm-hmm.
Because they can only exist in the shadows. It's only when we shine our light on them that they no longer have power over us. So when I was first learning about this and considering the possibility that I could have attachments, the spiritual community was so invalidating for me because it was a lot of those kind of beliefs. Well, yeah, if you believe you have entities, then maybe you do, or you created them yourself, or I don't know, there's so many like things like that that they say, beliefs that they ascribe to because of the fear of looking at these things.
Right.
I was only able to find one other person by one other, especially quantum healing practitioners at the time. There was no one talking about these
Is
things.
that how we got into RSR?
Yeah,
Via that
no.
string? No.
Well, yeah, eventually that led us down that stream. But the one practitioner I found was Aurora. from Rising Phoenix, Aurora.
Yes, yes, yes.
And she had a hypnosis session on her channel. I believe they had gone, like they regressed back to Egypt, and the person had reptilian entities attached to her. And Aurora walked them through like how to clear these entities and things like that. And that was such a huge revelation for me. Like, okay, this is real. And this could be happening to me. And all of those like beliefs in the spiritual community, I was still working through them, right? Because I didn't want that reality for myself.
I didn't fucking want it either. And then I know we're connected. So I'm like, well, she got them. I fucking have them too, for sure. There's
Yeah. Yeah. And that's one of the things about entities is like they don't give a shit if you believe in them or not. Like that's not a requirement for you to have attachments.
same for the light side too. They don't give a shit if you believe in them or not. They're just
Right.
there. They're just doing their job, existing and functioning as we are.
Right. So at the time, like that belief in entities was really being labeled as fear-based, a fear-based belief. If you believe in entities, that's fear-based. But if you look at it from a point of neutrality, that information is not fear-based. You can't have information that's fear-based. It's only because it's triggering innate fears in people. And a lot of people will tie it back to Christianity, and Christianity's talk about demons and things like that. And you have to wonder, okay, well, why? Why did they have beliefs in demons? Is there some truth in that? Right. Yeah. So
they have it all across the board. It's just that they've discovered their one, line of spirituality and high vibe stuff that they're like, well, we get to pick our roles and our reality.
right.
So we're not going to add everything.
Right.
We're just going to have a checklist of things that we want.
Right.
Well, who the fuck doesn't want that? Who doesn't?
Right. And if we do, which they admit to, if we do live in a realm of duality, and you believe in angels, benevolent angels, then you would have to believe in their equal and opposite, right? Otherwise, you're just ignoring it, putting your head in the sand and pretending like it doesn't exist. And that drives me crazy because not only has it been my own experience, but all of the clients and people that we have met with and helped and talked to about their own experience with these entities is invalidating them as well. So, what triggered this conversation today was a post made by Dolores Cannon's Facebook page. Obviously, Dolores is not making these posts. I believe the page is run by her daughter, but I think there are other people involved as well. So I don't know who exactly made the post, but it was specifically calling out David Icke and his new book about the soul trap. And I forget the specific words used. Well, I can read it to you. Let's do that. Let me just find it real quick.
Great. Let's read. Oh, I think you're talking to me, right? Seeking Truth, 1984, Flawless Hair. No, it's like Tina's got nice hair too.
You like my flower?
Yes,
it was Karen's suggestion. Okay, so this is the post. There is some reincarnation disinformation going around lately, and I feel it's very important to set the record straight. Set the record straight, as if they are the #1 authority on reincarnation. David Icke is 100% wrong about what he's been saying about reincarnation. So she goes on to, or they go on to say, there are no quote unquote demonic entities masquerading as your loved ones, trying to trick you into a soul trap when you die. The white light he claims is a trap, is how your silver etheric cord gets severed from your body when you die. If you don't, and if that's true, that would make sense as like the memory wipe, because if you're getting severed at that point, then that could also be wiping your memory. There's a severing, which they're admitting occurs.
Mm-hmm.
Your etheric cord gets severed from your body when you die. If you don't go into that light, you remain on earth as a ghost. It is essential you enter that light to move on to heal, to move on to the next life and evolve your soul. This is fear being used to sell tickets to events, nothing more. What do you guys think about that? We know for sure that there are entities who masquerade as loved ones. People, we've seen that. We've seen that ourselves. Our clients have seen that, when like Lana and specifically saw her mother show up to her in a vision.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, she wants to connect with her mother.
Mm-hmm.
And next thing you know, the mother turns into a reptilian entity, So it's just that reptilian trying to siphon the energy by pretending. There are countless accounts of that kind of thing happening. So we know that happens. Like that's a fact. I think we can say that's an actual fact. That's something that we know that actually happens. What gets me is that she did say in the post, oh, well, how can we be the authority? Like someone was challenging them, right? How can you be the authority? None of us really know. And she says, well, over 50 years of past life regression. That's how we can be the authority. So I said, okay, if you believe that all of the information that came through in Dolores's 50 years of sessions is 100% fact, then you cannot discount information that comes through in other people's sessions like ours, right? So I commented, I was very general. I wasn't defensive or like trying to like be negative or like start anything.
You're usually not. You're usually pretty neutral at presenting information.
I was coming from a very neutral place, and I just said for myself, as a quantum healing practitioner myself, this is what we've seen, and we can't discount it. It wasn't a very long comment, maybe a little paragraph. And I noticed that there was no likes or anything on it. So I'm like, let me just go see if it's still there. And it was gone. She deleted it.
Yeah, I bet.
And so I left another comment saying, interesting that my comment was deleted. Like, why is that? Because this is actual information coming from quantum healing sessions that you put all of your weight into these sessions, right? So why are you discounting that information if this is how it's coming through? We've seen false light councils. We've seen souls getting harvested upon death after being in a war. We've seen them getting trapped in physical objects and recycled and forced into bodies, human bodies. We've seen soul contracts being made with demonic entities that promise all the future offspring of that person to that entity. So then that entity owns that person and all the ancestry of that line. These are things that we've seen in session. So I commented back and, said that just like, if you're going to believe everything that came from Dolores' sessions, then you have to take into account all the information, not just hers, because I do believe that to some extent, Dolores was being tricked by false light beings or demonic entities that were masquerading as higher selves or the subconscious or whatever you want to call it.
Right. There's no checking.
Right.
Back then.
No one
or even now, there's no checking.
Right. She wasn't verifying who that voice was speaking through that person. Yeah. So
Right.
And I was actually heartened to see that there were some people in there that were questioning things, you know, and then there were, of course, the majority of the people like, oh God, that's just so fear-based. If that's coming from Ike, then, you know, just forget it and all of these things. But I'm like, if this information is coming into the collective consciousness in the way it is now, you know, it's not just coming through us. When it started to come through us, we felt very alone and very ostracized from the community. It's not something that we were looking for.
I know. This is what I'm saying. Remember my last rant where I'm like, you think we want to be on the other side and against the grain? Like, you think that's easy? It's fucking not easy for us. If you go back to our first videos, we talk about all the traumas, all our points of vulnerability. And this is where it has led us
Right.
to discovering truth, even if it goes against our own current belief systems.
Right.
Like, we have to question our belief systems at every turn.
Right. And so, you know, she goes on to say, Dolores in the comments, Dolores was very clear that we each get to create our own heaven after we die. And it can be based on Buddhist beliefs or Hindu or Christian or whatever you believe heaven to be, that's what you can create. And that is very much true. But what they don't take into account is that those realms are still part of the matrix. They're still realms of thought being honored by form.
I think that's where there's a huge divide in in a lot of people, unless they're able to grasp the matrix concept. There's not going to be another thought outside of that construct because they're not even taking that into consideration, that there are multiple higher dimensions of heaven, but in this matrix, like, you have to end it in that sentence knowing that this is an inversion. And so you can go to the 50th dimension, like, oh, you know, palace of of jewels and casinos, but
Yeah.
you're going to end up on a fucking conveyor belt sometime
On your way back.
when you're done.
Yeah. And that's what I think they don't get it at all because they're not even considering that this could be true, that not everything is like dark and demonic, you know, like these are light beings, but they're still part of the system.
Yeah, just because they say they're light beings. Again, you can have like a really cute little gizmo come to you, but then after
he eats the candy,
yeah, it turns into a little fucking shithead.
Yeah, we should talk about that too. The gremlins. Gremlins are real, guys. Let me just go through the comments real quick. Hi, Abstract Angel. How are you?
Yeah, last trip. I'm hoping. Oh yeah. So while you're looking at the comments, just want to share my latest endeavor. I know we've always talked about protection, which is also very important. We still encourage protection. But I felt like some kind of like energetic shift because I was asking for guidance in just with my own higher knowing, like how can I absolutely bring myself to a space where I'm confident of getting out of here. So of course you got to bring your unconscious, subconscious to light. You have to be able to explore all parts of you and discover what's in there so that it can't be held against you, right? Knowing all your points of vulnerability, knowing what it feels like when it's out, allowing for your body to have those reactions so that you can kind of put an end, like a healing type end to it, or recognizing it. So yeah, I felt like, okay, I've done the hardcore protection, you know, like for our family and all that. And I even stopped myself, like even part of the prayer is, or the prayer I'll call prayer, is I command not to dream. I command not to astral travel or whatever. I command to stay in my physical body, not to be or be manipulated in mind, body, soul consciousness across all the time and space, a multi-dimensional reality within my subconscious, conscious, and etheric. Like, I'll say it all. And so I think that worked for a bit, but then I'm like, wait a minute. I go, I ain't getting any, you know, I'm gonna die eventually. And if I keep saying this, I know I'm missing a couple of pieces within my labyrinth inside. So I feel like I'm strong enough that, yeah, I'm not full. I mean, I, as the adult, am not fully terrified of demons and things like that. I do have to work on it on the sleep time because I have been attacked. I have had physical reactions. I have had like fear in my body. So I decided, I'm like, you know what? You're just going to stop the protection, at least like the extent of your commands in your protection. And you're just going to go all in and ask for the subconscious to be conscious so that way I could be aware of what's going on. I took a couple of the pointers that Tina shared with me about the lucid dreaming stuff because, again, if we are out of body and, you know, after we die, we have to, I guess, be able to grasp that if, you know, the dream space, which is where I need to fucking get a grip of it.
Yeah.
So that because when I'm clearly dreaming, I don't know that I'm dreaming, right? So yeah, I think that that hardcore dream that I had where I was in a really bad demonic space, I had a really bad reaction to it where my body was completely paralyzed in fear and I cried after because that's how scary it was to me. So yeah, I'm like, okay, yeah, that's a great place to start. At least I know where I need work. So to go where the fear is, so that if I am ever faced with it, then I will be able to stand up to it.
Yeah.
On a conscious way.
Right.
So.
Yeah. And that's really important too, because I think a lot of times in our sleep, they're targeting our inner child, right? Like the adult self is obviously not afraid of these things, but they're targeting the inner child and the fractured parts of ourselves. That's
Right.
how they slip in.
Exactly. So I'm allowing for them to, I think I did enough work so far that I will be able to handle what is to come. So that way I'll just be a little more aware about it and where
Yeah.
I need to do the work so that I can, yeah, not be in that space of fear.
Yeah. So getting back to Dolores's work, I just want to say that I love Dolores. I love her work. I think it's amazing. And the way it has rippled out and expanded consciousness across this earth is something that cannot be denied. You cannot take that from her. But this is like, um, I guess like another step in our evolution of our spirituality and understanding, right? Like at the time, that's where they were. But what the team that is still running that is doing is keeping people stuck there and not
So that they could be
allowing,
dependent on.
right, and not allowing for the evolution to naturally take place past these ideas.
I think that's the problem with people is that they're still being held back by, yeah, fear of someone outgrowing them, not needing them anymore, you know, being or having that inferiority type, you know,
Right.
that
And
kind of shit.
they're not even evolving the QHHT process at all. You know, it's still exactly the same as when Dolores was here. That's not how consciousness works. Like it doesn't remain the same. We're constantly evolving. And really, that's why Candace came out with Beyond Quantum Healing, to remove the restrictions from the practitioners and open up that space for exploration where there are no limitations anymore. You can talk to entities, you can do whatever you want in your practice. You know,
Right.
you make your BQH practice your own. Whatever you want to specialize in, that's what you do, you know? And it removes the restrictions for having to have in-person sessions. I mean, everything's online these days. The fact that you can't have a QHHT session online is like archaic at this point.
Yeah.
You know, it really is. So I feel like that the consciousness that is there in that, whatever you want to call that, in her legacy, is they're keeping it's stuck. and not allowing for it to expand in the natural way that it could. Because if it was allowed to expand naturally, these ideas, this new consciousness would be coming in to sessions. But because they're not even open to the possibility, it doesn't come to them. Or maybe it does to some practitioners, but they have to keep it on the down low. I've heard some practitioners say that. There are certain things that they're not even allowed to talk about in those groups, or they'll get kicked out and they'll take their certification away if they even mention entities or anything dark or evil. You know, Dolores denied that there was anything dark or evil at all. So if you deny that there's dark or evil,
then you go against the god, Dolores.
yeah. And if that were true for her, then she could have been talking to entities the whole time, and they could have been telling her all kinds of misinformation because she wasn't aware that that could be happening. Because the idea that we have of these dark entities is that they're, you know, they're going to growl at you and be malicious and all of those things.
They do sometimes. I'm just saying. But I mean, but it's nothing when you're exposed to it.
If you're challenging them, they do. If you're challenging them, they do. Otherwise, they could be talking like you and I.
But the way that they are responding to it is very entity-like.
Yes. Yes. Mostly what we're dealing with in this realm is manipulation, is gaslighting. It's not overt in your face, like slap you across the face abuse. It's the difference between an overt narcissist and a covert narcissist. This system is a covert narcissist. It is manipulating us and gaslighting us and poisoning us silently. You know, there's a war, a silent war against us. They're not like, you know, in our face. Now they are. They're getting more bold as time moves forward and things are getting worse, to where the point where they're, you know, adding bugs in our food right under our noses and we don't even know. Food is changing. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I mean, the quality of the food is just getting worse and worse, and they're adding bugs to it now. If you see anything in your food called sustainable, it could have bugs in it, or the word chitin, I think it's pronounced, which is a chemical that is toxic to humans, comes from bugs. And they're, you know, they're just trying to poison us in any way they can. So spiritually, we're evolving to a place now where we're observing how the covert narcissist is working. And if we believe, if spiritual people believe in as above, so below, and you look around at what's happening now on the earth, then how can you think that the higher realms are just, you know, rosy and fine? There must be some.
You can't deny the world that we're in.
Right. It must be coming from somewhere. If we know that things manifest in spirit first and then come down into the physical, then it has to be coming from somewhere. How can you look around at the evil in the world, the child torture and abuse? Someone, Lisa, sent me a video last week, I think it was, and it was Jesse Zaboter talking about the abuse that, I don't even know if abuse is, there has to be a word like worse than abuse, the torture that these children from these like satanic families endure. The torture, the abuse, the killing of these children. How I have a problem with the idea that a soul would choose that. That pure innocence of a child basically getting raped. That is an evil that I can't wrap my head around someone choosing for themselves. And that's literally their life. Being abused, tortured, and raped. That is their life. There's nothing outside of that. That's what they live. for the short amount of time that they're here, and that's it. Why would a soul choose that? And there
Maybe they're
are
NPCs.
there. Yeah, but if they were, they wouldn't be able to use them for their rituals because they need the
Oh.
pure essence of spirit. And there are people that will come through and say that the channelers that will say that the children, the souls chose this so that they could wake us up, that they made this sacrifice so that they could wake us up. But how could that be true? Because all of this is happening underground. We don't see it. Nobody knows. It's happening in the darkness. The only reason why it's coming to light now is because there's like 1 or 2, 3 people that are talking about it, maybe. You know? So I feel like what we're doing and what we do in abusive relationships is we make excuses for our abusers. That's what we do because that's what we know. If that's all we know as a child, as an adult, whatever, because it starts in childhood, right? That's what we know as love. And we make excuses for the people that are abusing us because they're traumatized too, you know, and we understand the reasons why they're doing this to us. So we make excuses for them. But that time has come to an end. We're not making excuses for abusers anymore. We understand that they're also traumatized. We might have compassion for them, but we're not accepting the abuse anymore. Bottom line, we're not accepting the abuse from an individual, from a corporation, from a company, from the government, from the overlords, from entities, from anyone. Like we're done accepting the abuse. And this is where we're evolving our consciousness beyond the idea, the belief that we need to evolve our souls through suffering, through trauma. We don't. Because if you, because first of all, these physical lives that involve the amount of trauma that happens here on earth can actually degrade the soul. Not evolve the soul, but degrade the soul, because most people aren't learning from their trauma. It's only the highly evolved souls that are actually learning from their suffering and trauma, but most people aren't.
No,
So
they're
that,
just repeating.
yeah. So they're repeating and repeating and repeating. So that's actually leading to the degradation of their being, not the evolution. And that's why there's so much, you know, mental illness and everything is devolving. Everyone's devolving because of the degradation of the soul. And there's also a belief in the spiritual community that it doesn't matter what we do here. It doesn't matter. There's no wrong or right choices. Everything's fine in the grander scheme of things. And maybe on the highest level it is. But where we're at right now, like that's just not acceptable anymore. You know?
Yeah.
Like we're evolving out of that whole belief system and paradigm. Hold on, I gotta let go.
Oh, what? I was listening. What is happening here? Well, yeah, just take what resonates and leave the rest. It'll stop a lot of heartache, I feel. Just ignore the whole chat.
Why?
No, there's just a lot of back and forth that it's, go ahead. I'm listening to you.
Oh. Um, yeah, Lisa, I agree. It does matter what we do here, and everything that we do in physicality affects our soul. The fact that there's no right choice or no wrong choice is really a slippery slope, you know, because then we make excuses for everything, for others, for ourselves, and we're not taking accountability for our choices. We're bypassing it because it doesn't matter. There's no right or wrong. and this idea you can see getting firmly planted within the collective consciousness now.
No accountability.
Yeah. No accountability for self, not taking responsibility. It's everyone else's fault, like all of those kinds of things. And where we're going and trying to also, put our ideas out there, so maybe it will help someone else, is taking full responsibility. Because even though, there's a lot of trauma and abuse here, we still need to take responsibility for ourselves. That doesn't, and not fall into the perpetual victimhood that this can create. Because when you come across the soul trap theory, and I can see why a lot of people and practitioners are hesitant to talk about this kind of thing. Because if a spiritually immature person comes across this information without having the wisdom of learning through their trauma and learning through their suffering and coming to a place of neutrality and self-love and compassion, you learn that this place could be a soul trap, that could totally throw you off, and send you in a spiral of perpetual victimhood where everything is always the fault of the archons and you have no responsibility at all. It also induces a lot of fear in people. Do I think the concept in itself is fear-based? No, because I don't believe in that. I don't believe information is fear-based, but I do know that it can trigger deep, deep-seated fears in people. And those are the fears. This is an opportunity for healing. If you find that the soul trap theory is sparking like a huge amount of fear within your system, then that's good. You need to look at that fear, find out where it's coming from, do the healing, do the releasing so that you can come into your sovereignty and your power as a whole and complete spirited being, and know that you are so much more powerful than all of it. But you don't just have to believe that, you have to know that and feel it in the very fiber of your being. And that's why Karen was talking about like asking for her unconscious stuff to come up in her dreams so that she has the opportunity to look at it and clear it and be more powerful, be more sovereign. You don't just get to say I'm sovereign and that's it. Like it doesn't work that way.
I wish then we would have been sovereign a long time ago.
Yeah, it's not just something you can say. You have to do the inner work. You have to do the shadow work. If there are parts of yourself that you've cast aside and just don't look at because you've been told by the world that they're not worthy, then that's a vulnerability. They're going to play on your shame. They're going to play on your unworthiness. They're going to pick all of those things, and use them against you. Okay, so the tunnel thing. I think the tunnel and the white light, the hyper focus on that, I really believe is a distraction, because I feel like, and from what we've seen in our sessions, the afterlife is going to be different for everyone. I can only speak for myself and where I'm at right now. We are never telling anyone what to do or what not to do. This is an individual journey that each person has to take. And where I'm at right now is that now my job here is to continue to do the inner work, to gain as much wisdom as I can while I'm here through using our challenges and using the adversity to alchemize that, to learn how to be an alchemist. It's all about the alchemy in this realm. Is it a school? No. Okay, we all agree that. I don't want to like trigger anyone out there.
There's a lot of that going on. Like,
yeah.
What? You gotta learn here.
Yeah. We all agree that Earth is not a school. However, you have to do the work while you're here. This is how we ascend through Earth. If you don't take
That's how
any
you
of the
graduate.
that's how you graduate. If you don't take any of the challenges and alchemize them, then you're just going to continue to be recycled.
They'll use it against you.
Right. So you have to transcend them. While you're here, you have to do the work. That's the only way out. It's the only way out of this
Yeah.
game or whatever, this simulation, whatever you want to call it.
Because they will use everything against you to stay here. That's how we were here in the first place.
Right. So if you harmed someone in the past and you're still carrying guilt and shame about that, and you haven't forgiven yourself, you haven't forgiven that other person, they're going to use that and say, well, you know, in your life review or whatever, and show you this thing that happened and be like, well, now you have to go back and redo that. But if you go into the afterlife, leaving the body with full forgiveness for all of your past wrongs, all of your past mistakes, having rectified all of your relationships, even if it's not necessarily with the other person, like you don't need to go to your abuser and say, I forgive you. But you have to, at some point, find the forgiveness in your heart for that person. At some point, like forgiveness is the final step. There are a lot of things you have to work through before you get there. And at some point, you might even find gratitude for what that abuser gave to you, for how you found yourself through that adversity. And I know that's a really controversial thing to say, but it's true. And if you don't eventually find that forgiveness, that anger, that resentment within you is going to be an anchor when you leave the body. It's not going to allow you to fly home. It's going to anchor you here. This is why doing the inner work is so important. So my goal now is to do those things, to tie up the loose ends, to look back at my life and say, where did I go wrong? And have I forgiven myself for these things? You know, have I alchemized these experiences yet? Or are they still like hiding out there in the basement, you know, in the darkness?
That's where I'm looking.
Yeah, I think that's really a really important step. A really important step, because when you have those things that are in your energy field, they're going to anchor you here.
Totes.
Yeah, energetically, I'm talking. Energetically, they're heavy, heavy things to carry. And that's one of the reasons why I think we keep recycling back, because we're not releasing it all. We're taking it with us. This is why we do past life regressions and find that trauma is affecting me right now. That trauma from this past life that I've carried with me. That's why we do the work that we do, so that we can release them. Because we don't process through it all. So now it's about observing the clown show, the abusers, like having the higher perspective of like what's happening here, observing it, knowing the deception, knowing the manipulation, knowing the abuse, the trauma that they're inflicting upon us, but not just knowing it, healing from it. And then using that to your advantage, using that as a stepping stone into making the best of this life that you have. Because
That's what I'm trying to do now.
yeah.
I think I could balance both, you know, like being able to go into the dark stuff because of all the work that has been done, that now I want to enjoy the rest of my life here while I'm still here, however that much time is.
Yeah. And really stop taking life so seriously, because when you step back and do have the higher perspective and look at the fucking ridiculousness of it all, like you just have to laugh sometimes at some of this stuff. It's literally insane.
Right. I think
It's
like,
literally insane.
right. I don't feel that, I mean, like what we were saying, I think we were lucky again enough to go through the steps that we did, to see everything and then take it and then move on. So, yeah, I think to that, that is a learning process. That is, in a way, again, we're not allowed to use words like school, okay? It's not a school, but it's learning. We're learning things, we're taking things, we're leaving it, we're gathering more things as we are evolving, the natural course of how we should be evolving, not in the stunted way where we're constantly traumatized and suffering and then having to learn the hard way in this non-school. It's like,
Yeah.
we
We
understand,
are
like,
learning. I mean, if we weren't
yeah,
learning, we would be stunted. Of course, we're learning. Everything is about our learning and evolution and growth. I mean, the research you're doing,
there's
you're
just a
watching us right
stigma.
now, you're learning. Yeah,
Yeah,
now there's
there's a
this
stigma
stigma.
around calling it a school. We're not saying it's a fucking school, okay? Get over it. Not you, like whoever is offended by what I just said. It's not that. But it's like we are technically learning from each other, getting tricks on how the fuck to get out of here if that's your goal, finding ways, researching, presenting with things that we've learned in our sessions, gathering that kind of information to help. And is educate not allowed to be said? Like, it, that's what I
Yeah,
mean. Like,
that's weird.
I hate the limitations of the words that we are limited to. We are limited to words because it's
Yeah.
so much of an attachment of like, no, we don't associate. This is evil here. Like, yeah, it is fucking evil here, but it could also be beautiful. On the
Mhm.
contrary, like,
Mhm.